Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Samach Daled Amud Beis, 64b of Maseches Kiddushin, starting from the Mishnah 7 lines down the page. The Mishnah says, HaMekadesh es bito stam. So a man accepts Kiddushin on behalf of his daughter, stam, without specifying which daughter he was accepting Kiddushin for. So he encounters a man and he accepts Kiddushin from that man for his daughter, but he doesn't specify which daughter. So it's a question then which daughter he accepted it for. So the Mishnah says, Ein ha-bogros bichlal, the bogros is bogeres, a bogeres is a girl that's more than 12 and a half, is not included in the suffix, in the doubt of who he accepted for. And that's because he is not able to accept Kiddushin for a bogeres. He can only accept Kiddushin for a katana, a child, or even a naira, a 12-year-old, but once she's 12 and a half, she's a bogeres, he can't receive her Kiddushin, so she's not part of the doubt of which daughter he accepted the Kiddushin for. Then it gives another case. Mishiyesh lo shtei kitei banos, mishtei nashim. A man who has two sets of daughters, meaning because they're from two different wives. The Amar, and he said, Kidashti es biti hagedola, veini yodea, he says, I accepted Kiddushin for my gedola, for my older daughter. Veini yodea im gedola shebigdolos, o gedola shebiktanos. I'm not sure at the time when I said gedola if I meant the gedola shebigdolos. So there's two sets. So she has a first wife and a second wife. Each one has daughters, and he accepted for the older daughter. He doesn't know if he meant the older of the older ones, being from his first wife, o gedola shebiktanos, or the older of the younger ones from the second wife, o kitana shebigdolos, or maybe he even meant the younger one from the first wife, of the older ones, Shegedola mina gedola shebiktanos, who's older than the oldest of the younger ones. So let's say that again there's two wives, each wife has daughters. We'll see if it's two or three. So each wife has daughters. So he says the older daughter. Well, the youngest of the first wife is older than the oldest of the second wife. So we're not sure what he meant. Did he mean the oldest of the oldest ones? Did he mean the oldest of the younger ones? Or did he even mean the youngest of the older ones who's older than the oldest of the younger ones? Says the Mishnah, Kulan Asuros. They're all forbidden. They're all in doubt. Maybe they're married to this man. Chutz min haktana shebiktanos, except for the youngest of the youngest, who's certainly not included. She's definitely not the older one. She's not older than anybody. Divi Rabbi Meir, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Kulan mutaros. No, they're all permitted. Chutz min hagedola shebigdolos, except for the oldest of the oldest. If he said he's doing it for the gedola, for the older one, Rabbi Yossi says, we don't have any doubt what he means. We assume that he meant the oldest of the older ones. Okay, what about the opposite case? Kidashti es biti katana. He says, I betrothed my younger daughter. I said katana, the young one. Veini yodea im katana shebiktanos or katana shebigdolos. I don't know if I meant the youngest of the younger set or the youngest of the older set. O gedola shebiktanos, or maybe I meant the older of the younger set. Shei katana, meaning katana shebigdolos, because the older of the younger set is still younger than the youngest of the older set. Kulan asuros, they're all forbidden, they're all suffix, maybe they're married to this man. Chutz min hagedola shebigdolos, except for the oldest of the oldest, who's not younger than anybody. Divri Rabbi Meir, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Kulan mutaros, no, they're all permitted. Chutz min haktana shebiktanos, except for the youngest of the youngest. Rabbi Yossi says if he said that he's betrothing the young one, what he meant was the youngest of the youngest. And that's what we assume. We don't have any doubts about the other ones. That's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Okay. Says the Gemara, going back to the first halacha of the Mishnah was, Hamakadosh is Bito Stam, one who accepts Kiddushin for his daughter Stam without specifying which daughter. Eina Bogros Bechal. The Bogaros, the older ones, the adult ones, past all we have, are not included in our doubt of who got the Kiddushin. Says the Gemara, Ha Ketanos Bechal. So that implies, though, that the younger ones are Bechal, they are included. We don't know. All the younger ones remain in doubt as to who is betrothed. Says the Gemara, Shmas Mina, we can learn from here, Kiddushin she'em mesurim lebia, habu Kiddushin. That a Kiddushin that cannot lead to a bia, to intercourse, is still a good Kiddushin. That's what this implies. Now this was a machlokas, this was a dispute back on Daf Nur Aleph Amar Aleph on 51a, between Abaye and Rava said that a Kiddushin that's not Master Levi, a Kiddushin that cannot lead to intercourse is not a Kiddushin. Now this is a Kiddushin that can't lead to intercourse because it wasn't clear which of his daughters he was accepting Kiddushin for. He did it stam, and so from the very beginning, it's not like later he forgot. From the very beginning, it wasn't clear which of his daughters he was marrying off, and therefore, at no point in time was there a good Kiddushin that would mean there was no Kiddushin that could have led to bia, that could have led to intercourse, because from the very outset it was in doubt which of the daughters was married to this man. Our Mishnah implies that the older, the Bogaros, are not part of the doubt of who had Kiddushin, but all the younger ones, all his Ketanos, all his young daughters, would be in doubt. Maybe the Kiddushin is for them. Now that's a Kiddushin that can't lead to bia. It can't lead to intercourse. It seems to be a proof for Abaye over there that even a Kiddushin that can't lead to intercourse is a good Kiddushin. So the Gemara says, no, Hacha b'mayaskin, here what are we dealing with? Kishein sham ela gedolo p'tara. We're talking about where he only had two daughters. One was an adult, one was a child. And the Mishnah is saying that the adult, we have even if he did it stam, he accepted the Kiddushin without specifying, we have no doubt about the adult. He can't accept Kiddushin for the adult. We know that it's for the child. Says the Gemara of Habogros Ketani. That's not the implication. The implication is that there are multiple adult children, Bogaros, and likewise we would assume that there's multiple Ketanos that corresponding to that, multiple children, before adulthood daughters. And because the Mishnah says the Bogros, the adult children, plural, are not part of the suffix. It doesn't say the adult child, it says the adult children. And again, like I said, that implies if there are adult children plural, there are probably also, we're talking about a case where there are Ketanos, there are multiple children who are Ketanos who would be in doubt. So how can we say there's just one of each? So the Gemara says, no, my Bogros to Alma. When we say plural Bogros, the adult children are not part of the doubt, we mean in general, meaning when you have these cases, the adult children are not part of the suffix. We're talking about a case where there was only one adult child, but when you have a case like this, the adult children are not part of the suffix. That's what it's saying. But there's only one adult child, there's only one child, under adult child, and minor, I guess is the word. There's only one minor here, and so the Mishnah is saying that the adult's not part of the suffix, so we know the Kiddushin is for the minor, even though it was stam, he didn't specify which daughter. So the Gemara says, Bogros Mayavatayu. So if there's only one adult, so what does it need to teach me that the adult's not part of the suffix? That's obvious. Of course, he can't accept Kiddushin for an adult. So what's the Mishnah telling me? If he has a minor and an adult, daughter, and he accepts Kiddushin stam, it goes to the minor, not for the adult. Of course, he can't do it for the adult. So says Gemara Hacha b'mayaskim. Here, what are we dealing with? Dishavise shliach. We're talking about where the adult child appointed him to accept Kiddushin for her. So now he could accept Kiddushin for her. Ma'od Tema, what might I have said? Ki mekabel Kiddushi adaita didaka mekabel. you might have said when he received the Kiddushin stam, maybe he did have in mind his adult child, because he could accept Kiddushin for her because she assigned him to. So she should be part of the doubt. Kamash Malan, the Mishnah comes to teach me, no, we would not assume that. Lo shavik inish midi de islay hana minei, vabin midi de eslay hana minei. A person, a man would not abandon, would not leave behind a situation where he can gain from, and do something that he has nothing to gain from. Meaning, if his adult, if he's the shliach, if he's the agent to accept Kiddushin for his adult daughter, okay, he could accept it, but he doesn't get the money. It goes to her, so he doesn't gain anything. But if it's his minor daughter, then the money goes to him. So the Mishnah is teaching me that he wouldn't, even though he's allowed to accept Kiddushin for his adult child, because she made him a shliach, she made him an agent, but he would prefer, and he would prioritize accepting Kiddushin for his young daughter, because there he gets the money, rather than for his older daughter. And that's why we assume that it's for the younger daughter. That's what the Mishnah will be teaching me. But says the Gemara, Milo askinan da'amra le kiddushai lacha. But isn't the implication here in this Mishnah that it's true in all cases, even in a case where the older daughter would say, and you can keep the Kiddushin money, Dad. So she says to her father, you can keep it. So there's no advantage, there's no monetary advantage to him to accept it for his minor daughter, because his adult daughter also gave him permission to keep the money. So it sounds like even in that case, though, she wouldn't be included in the doubt, and we would assume that the Kiddushin was for the minor. Why is that? Says the Gemara explains, because even still, lo shavik inish mitzvah de rami alei v'aven mitzvah de lo rami alei. A man won't abandon a mitzvah that's upon him to do something that's not upon him. In other words, there's a mitzvah, the Gemara is telling us, for a man to marry off his daughter, but that's only while she's still a child, meaning once she's an adult, it's out of his hands. It's not his mitzvah anymore. But while she's still a child, it's his mitzvah to marry her off. So therefore, here we have that somebody is giving Kiddushin to him stam. He didn't specify which daughter. And even though he has permission to accept Kiddushin for his older daughter, and she gave him permission to keep the money, the Mishnah is teaching me we would still assume that he's accepting it for his younger daughter, because there he has a mitzvah to marry her off, as opposed to once she reaches adulthood, it's no longer his mitzvah to marry her off. Okay, now the Gemara discusses the second case of the Mishnah, which is the case where a man has two wives, or he has, not necessarily currently, but he has daughters from two wives, one after the other, and he accepts Kiddushin for the Gedola, and then he forgets which daughter he meant when he said Gedola, the older one. And a similar case where he accepts it for a Ketana, for the younger one, but he doesn't remember afterwards which one he meant. So the Gemara wonders why the Mishnah needs to teach me both cases, the Gedola, the older daughter, and the younger daughter. They seem to, just be mirroring each other. They're redundant. The second case of the Ketana seems to be just a repetition of the first case of the Gedola. I should be able to deduce what would be in that case from the first case. So the Gemara says, no, tzricha. We need both the cases of where he accepts Kiddushin for the Gedola, for an older one, and for a younger one. Diashmin and Kamaisa, because if they only taught me the case of the older daughter, where he accepted for a Gedola, Behach Ka'amar, we don't mean an adult, we just mean the older one. Behach Ka'amar Rabbi Meir, that's maybe where Rabbi Meir said that it could be any of the daughters, except for the youngest one. Remember, the halacha was, according to Rabbi Meir, that when he says he accepts it for the Gedola, for an older one, he may have meant the older of the older ones, the older of the younger ones, or the younger of the older ones who's still older than the older of the younger ones. So any daughter that's older than anybody would be part of the suffix, part of the doubt. The only one not part of that would be the youngest of the youngest. That was Rabbi Meir's opinion. Now, if he had only said it by this case, where the man said the older one, and not by the case where he said the younger one, explains the Gemara, maybe I would have said it's only in that case. To keep it like a zutra mina, since there's somebody younger, lahach gidola karila, he might call her an older one. As long as there's somebody younger, he might refer to his daughter as the older one. It's complementary, so he would speak that way. Avabaha, when it comes to the younger one, maybe he agrees to Rabbi Yossi that he only calls the younger one the youngest. He will only call the youngest one the younger one, because it's insulting to any of the other ones to call them the younger. They're older than somebody. So I might have thought that Rabbi Meir would agree to Rabbi Yossi that if he says the younger one, he means only the youngest of the youngest. The Mishnah comes to tell me, no, he would call anybody who's younger than somebody else, he would call the younger one. V'yitmar baha, and if it only told me, so that's why I need the case of the Ketana, of the younger one. Why? But maybe it could have only said that case, the younger one, I could figure out. Again, the redundant, I could say, if all these rules apply when he says the younger one, they should apply when he says the older one. But explains the Gemara, B'itmar Baha, if the Mishnah only talked about the case where he says the younger one, Baha Kamar Rabbi Yossi. So now we go to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi was the one who said that no. If he says the younger one, he means the younger one. If he says the youngest, if he says the older one, he means the oldest. But if I only talked about the case where he said the younger one, I might have said that's where Rabbi Yossi said he means the youngest. Because for the same logic, because I would say that he doesn't want to insult any other one by calling them the younger one, and if they're older than somebody. So if he said the younger one, maybe he only means the youngest. But maybe in the case where he says the older one, but in the case where he says the older one, maybe Rabbi Yossi would agree to Rabbi Meir and say that the older one doesn't necessarily refer to the oldest. It could refer to anyone who's older than anybody else, because, again, it's not insulting to call them the older one. So maybe Rabbi Yossi would agree to Rabbi Meir in that case that we're in doubt about, and we would say it could be anybody. Tzricha. That's why it was necessary to teach me even the case where he says the older one, to bring out Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Even there, Rabbi Yossi would say, no, if he says the older one, he means the oldest of the oldest. Even though it's not so insulting to call anybody else the older one, Rabbi Yossi says, no, he means the oldest of the oldest. Okay. So we have Rabbi Meir holding that when he says the older one, we're not sure who he meant. He could have meant any of the older ones. If he says the younger one, we don't know who he meant. He could have meant any of the younger ones. So the Memra, this seems to imply, Rabbi Meir Savar, that Rabbi Meir holds Machis Inish Nafshei L'Sfeika, that a person is ready to use a language that can leave things in doubt. Rabbi Yossi Savar, and Rabbi Yossi says, holds Lo Machis Inish L'Sfeika, that a man does not enter himself into use a language where there's something in doubt. So, because that's what they're saying. Rabbi Meir is saying, he used this one, he said the Gedol, we don't know what that means. That's vague. It could be anybody except for the youngest. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, it means the oldest of the oldest. So maybe Rabbi Meir holds that a person might use a language that puts themselves in a situation of doubt. And Rabbi Yossi says he wouldn't do that. And so if he said Gedola, the older, he had to have meant the oldest of the oldest. Says the Gemara, but we find the opposite positions of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi in a different Mishnah. It's not because we're learning a Mishnah. Hanoder Ada Pesach. If a person takes a vow not to benefit from someone or something, Ada Pesach, up until Pesach. So how long does that go for? So Asur, it's forbidden for him to benefit from that thing or person, Ad Shiagia, until Pesach comes. But once Pesach comes, it's okay because he said Ada Pesach until Pesach. Now if he says Ad Sheyehei Pesach, until it will be Pesach, so then Asur Ad Sheyetze, then it's forbidden for him to benefit until Pesach's over. Because he said until it's going to be Pesach, and that includes Pesach itself, and so he can't benefit all of Pesach either. However, if he says Ad Pnei Pesach, if he says until the face of Pesach, what does the face of Pesach mean? So Rabbi Meir Omer Asur Ad Sheyagia. Rabbi Meir says it means until Erev Pesach, so until Pesach comes, he's forbidden. Once Pesach comes, it's permitted. Rabbi Yossi says Ad Sheyetze, until Pesach is over, because up until the face of Pesach could mean the day before Pesach, could mean the first day of Pesach, which is the face of the second day, or could mean the second day, which is the face of the third day, etc. It's a more vague language. So here Rabbi Meir is maintaining that we don't assume we're not going to be in doubt what he meant. He meant Pnei Pesach, it must mean the Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach. And so, meaning the item or the person will be forbidden to him up until Pesach comes. Because Rabbi Meir is holding, a person wouldn't use a language that's in doubt. Rabbi Yossi here holds, no, a person does use a language that's in doubt. And Pnei could mean any day. It could mean the day Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach. It could be the face of the second day of Pesach, the face of the third day of Pesach, right? Each Erev, each day before. So we see that Rabbi Meir holds here a person wouldn't use a language of doubt, and we insist that he means before Pesach. And Rabbi Yossi is maintaining that a person is open to using languages of doubt, and that's why we're not sure what he meant, and you have to wait till after Pesach to benefit. So we have a flip here. Rabbi Meir is now holding that a person doesn't enter into a situation of doubt, and Rabbi Yossi is holding that a person does. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Chanina bar Avdimi, Amar Rab Muchlefes Hashita. So they say in the name of Rab, you have to flip the opinions. That the Mishnah, with regards to benefiting before Pesach, it had the names wrong. You have to flip them. Rabbi Meir is the one who, Rabbi Yossi is the one who holds a person doesn't put themselves in doubt. And Pnei will mean before Pesach, up until Pesach itself starts. And Rabbi Meir holds a person uses a language that's in doubt, and therefore we remain in doubt throughout Pesach what he meant by Pnei. Maybe he meant before the second day or before the third day. And then the Gemara says, Vatanya, and indeed we have a brisa that indicates that we had the opinions backwards. Because the brisa says, Zehaklal, here's the rule, Kol shezmano kavua, if there's a set time, V'amar ad Pnei, and he says up until the face of, Rabbi Meir Omer ad sheyetze, Rabbi Meir holds it means until the end, because any day could be in doubt. Rabbi Yossi Omer ad sheyagia, Rabbi Yossi says it's until Pesach comes, because a person wouldn't use the language of doubt, and Pnei must mean Erev Pesach. Okay, Omer Abaye says, Machlokes bishtei kitei banos. The machlokes, the dispute between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi, is only where there are two sets of daughters. Two sets of daughters, and the man says, the man betrothed, he was Mekadesh, his older one, so then it could be the oldest of the oldest, it could be the oldest of the youngest, it could be the youngest of the oldest who's still older than the younger ones. That's Rabbi Meir's opinion, and Rabbi Yossi says that no, a person doesn't put themselves in a situation of doubt, and it means the oldest. So Rabbi says that's only where there's two sets of daughters. Aval bekat achas, but if there's only one set of daughters, divrei hakol gedola mamish, ktana mamish. Everybody will agree if there's only one set of daughters, there's only one wife, and he says the oldest, so the older one would mean the oldest. And if he says the younger one, he means the youngest. And then Sais, if there was a middle daughter, if he had three daughters from this wife, Bishma Karila, he would refer to her by her name. If he says the older one, he means the oldest. If he says the younger one, he means the youngest. If he meant the middle one, he would have said so. That's Abaye's position. Abaye says the whole argument is where there's only when there's two sets. So we don't know what he means. He says the oldest of the older, the oldest of the younger, we're not sure. But if there's only one set, older means oldest, younger means youngest. Amalei Rav Acha bar Masna Abaye. So Rav Ada bar Masna said to Abaye, El Me'ata. So if that's the case, Emtsa'is Shavkis. Shnia Tishtari. So the Gemara is asking, Rav Ada bar Masna is asking Abaye, if that's the case, that when there's only one set, he means by Gadol he means the oldest, and by Ketani he means the youngest. So Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so if that's the case, so in the Mishnah's case, where we have 2 sets, but in the second set, right, there's a second wife, and the second wife, the Gemara in this question is assuming that like each group had at least $3. So the second group, what was the rule according to Rabbi Meir? According to Rabbi Meir, we said maybe he means when he says Gedol, he says the oldest. So it could mean anyone from the older set, but even the younger set, it could mean the older one. And the way the Mishnah said it is, the only one that we're not in doubt about is the youngest of the youngest. Which would mean if the second set had 3 daughters, it sounds like we would be masupuk, we would be in doubt even about the middle of the 3 daughters from the second set. Now, hold on a second, says this is what they're asking Abaye. According to you, Abaye, that when there's only one set, there's no way that he would call the older one, the middle one, the older, or the younger. So why would we be in doubt about the middle of the younger set? Why will you call her the older one? What you see is that the Mishnah is saying he does, right? Because the Mishnah says we're in doubt about her. So we're in doubt even about the middle one of the younger set. Well, who is she older than? She's older than the youngest only. So if he's in doubt even in that case, the man says I accept the Kiddushin for the older daughter, and we're even in doubt about the younger set, the older of the youngest, the middle of the youngest. Oh, she's only older than one person, and yet we're in doubt about that. So that's similar. If we're in doubt in that case, then if there's only one set and there's 3 daughters, and he says the older one, well, maybe he means the middle one. Apparently we do have doubts about the middle one. So that's the implication of the Mishnah. Because in the Mishnah it implies that even of the younger set, we would be in doubt about that middle daughter. So the Gemara says, Hacha, b'mayaskin, and here what are we dealing with? B'she'ein sham elo gedolo k'tarna. No, the Mishnah's case is not where there's 3 daughters, there's only 2 in the second set. There's only 2 daughters. So there was no middle daughter. So the Mishnah is not telling us that we're in doubt about the middle daughter. There's no middle daughter. And so too, right, because if there was, we wouldn't be in doubt about her. That's what Abaye would maintain. We would never be in doubt about the middle of the younger set. If there were 3 daughters and he said the older one, he wouldn't mean the middle of the younger set. Just like if there was only one set and he said the older one, he wouldn't mean the middle one. V'achinami mistabra. Says the Gemara, it's very logical that there's only 2 daughters. Because if there were more, lisnaya, it should have said so. It doesn't say that there's more than 2. It just talks about the older one, the younger one. It sounds like there's only 2. Says the Gemara, so according to you, that since it doesn't mention that there's an older one, a middle one, that there's 3, that there is none, so emsais shavkis Rishona Devadai Sveka Vasirala Mikatanila. So according to you, that if the middle one was included, it would have said so. That's what you're saying. If the middle one was included, it would have said so. So in the first case, in the older ones, why doesn't it mention that there's a middle one? Because she would Shavkas Rishon Devade Sveikov Asirle. In the older ones, why did he mention that there's a middle one? She would have been part of the suffix, right? If he said, Mekadesh Gadol, Mekadesh the older one. We don't know who he meant. So we know he could have meant the oldest, could have meant the oldest, the youngest, and the Mishnah says he could have meant the youngest of the oldest, because she's still older than the younger set. What if there was a middle one of the older set? Wouldn't we be in doubt about her too? She's also older. I mean, if we're in doubt about the youngest of the oldest, we would be in doubt about the middle of the oldest set. So if you're saying that by not mentioning it, because it didn't say it, it must, it must not be the case that there must not be a middle one. But why not? In the first case, it would make sense to talk about a middle one. The rule would be true for her also. So the Gemara says, Hachyash, this is, hold on a second. Hasam, over there, Tana Ketana Dida Li'Isura. There it mentioned even a younger one and said that she's also, that she's part of the doubt. V'adim lahafta kashisha mina. So too, the one that's older than her. In other words, regarding the first wife, the older set, it said that the younger of the older set is in doubt. So if there was a middle one, I would know. It doesn't need to tell me that. It's obvious. If there was a middle one, she'd also be in doubt, because she's for sure older. Then, if the younger of the older set, we say, oh, but she's older than the younger set. So if there was a middle one who was older than her, of course she would be in doubt too. So it doesn't need to say that. And we can figure that out. But with regards to the younger set, in Isa de'ika, if there was a middle one who was also part of the doubt, Nisnaya should have said so. It wouldn't be obvious to us. And from the fact that it didn't say so, it means there wasn't one. And Abaye maintains, even if there was, she wouldn't be part of the doubt. If somebody said the older one, he would not mean the middle of the younger set. That's what we're maintaining. Okay, now Amar le Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua l'Rava. Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua said to Rava, Ha Pesach dekikat achas dami upligi. He says, wait a second. Abaye is making a rule here. Abaye is saying that if there was only one set, then we wouldn't have any doubts. Abaye said the whole machlokas, the whole discussion, the whole dispute between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi was when there were two sets. But if there was only one set, and he said the older one, we wouldn't know he meant the oldest of the one set. If he said the younger one, we would know he meant the youngest of that set. We wouldn't mean the middle one. So in that case, we wouldn't have a doubt. It's only when there's two sets that we're in doubt. Because you might call the older one, meaning from the older set, that's where we have a doubt. But when there's only one set, we don't have a doubt. So he says, Ha-Pesach, dekikat achas dam yupligi. The case of Pesach is kind of like one set, and yet they argue. What's the case of Pesach? Like we said before, that when he says that when a man said is no derhana, he vows not to benefit from something or someone at Pinei Pesach, until the face of Pesach. So what does he mean up until the face of Pesach? So he must be trying to say something that's there's only a couple of options, right? He either means up until Pesach is like until Erev Pesach. So he could be saying up until Erev Pesach, or he could be referring to one of the other days as Pnei Pesach, as the face of Pesach. But why would he refer to those other days as Pnei Pesach? That's wouldn't really make any sense when it would leave things totally in doubt, and it's more accurate to refer to Erev Pesach as Pnei Pesach, as the face of Pesach. So just like when there's only one set of daughters, we say he said the older one, he means the oldest. If he said the younger one, he means the youngest. It's only when there's two sets that it starts to get confused. So with the case of Pesach, if he said Pnei Pesach, we should say that he means before Pesach. Why would they argue in that case? So the Gemara explains, Amarle, so he said to him, Hasam belishna da'amak miflagi. You're right. In terms of the, if we understood Pnei Pesach to mean the face of Pesach, then indeed it would obviously mean Erev Pesach, like we're suggesting. But now the Gemara is revamping, offering a different approach, and said no, really they're arguing about what Pnei Pesach means. Mar Savar ad Pnei Pesach ad Kamei Pescha. One of them holds that up until the face of Pesach means until before Pesach. Umar Savar ad Mifna Pescha. The other one holds that it means until Mifna can mean Pnei can mean like leave, until Pesach leaves. So really they're not arguing about, originally we thought that ad Pnei Pesach, up until the Erev Pesach, the doubt was, what does he mean by the face of Pesach? Does he mean the face of the first day of Pesach, the face of the second day, the face of the third day? Now we're saying, no. If he said the face of Pesach, he means before Pesach starts. But the thing about the language of Pnei Pesach is actually, it could be interpreted in two ways. It could mean the face of Pesach, or it could mean when Pesach leaves. That's what they're arguing about. The one who says that the neder goes up until Pesach begins, holds that Pnei Pesach means until the face of Pesach, until Erev Pesach. The one who holds that when you say that, then the neder, the vow, extends until the end of Pesach, holds that ad Pnei Pesach means ad mifna Pescha, until Pesach departs. And it's just a question of what that language means. It's not that we have a doubt as to which day he meant when he said until the face of Pesach. No, they're arguing about what that language actually means. Okay, we'll hold here. Pick up next mission next time.